And welcome back. We have new insight today from a key group of undecided voters about what they're thinking as we head into the final couple months of this campaign. As we mentioned at the top of the hour, in our latest installment of the Deciders Focus Group series, we spoke to Latino voters, primarily in battleground states, who say they're unsatisfied with both major party candidates. As you heard earlier, these voters, who are among the increasingly small sliver of persuadable voters, say they really don't know that much about Vice President Harris. And they also said that Trump would be a bigger agent of change than Harris, but they're divided over what type of change Mr. Trump will bring, or whether it'll be good for the country. Take a listen.
I'd like to know who you'd say is the bigger agent of change. In other words, if one of them got elected, things would change more than if the other one got elected. By a show of fingers, who would say Harris is the bigger agent of change? None of you. Okay. Who would say Trump? Three of you. So why is Trump the bigger change agent?
I think he likes to flirt on the edge of what's legal and law-abiding, and that he'll push a lot of issues, immigration policy, domestic policy, foreign policy, to the point where it has to keep being litigated by the Supreme Court or the states or Congress. So it's just going to cause, I guess, more chaos, and it'll be more, in my opinion, negative change. So, yeah. And he'll get the Democrats really riled up. So,
Maddie, why is Trump more the agent of change?
A convicted felon president. Think about it. What would that do for the everyday Joe that's a convicted felon that wants a job to be a police officer or to work as a court-appointed something, or something that needs some type of clearance?
Gloria, why do you see Trump as greater agent of change than Harris?
So again, I've seen what he's done in the past. I think he will continue to do some of that work. I would hope that whoever he surrounds himself with, will actually be advising him and maybe course correcting and doing some more of that with him this time around.
But why isn't Harris an agent of change?
I don't feel like I've seen much of, honestly, I didn't really even know much about her as vice president. So why am I, what is she going to do different, as actual president?
Isn't that by definition a pretty big change by having her be the first female president, first woman of color president? Isn't that a big change?
Well, I don't like identity politics. I like meritocracy, that someone gets elected because they're good or they potentially have the background to do well. She couldn't even win her own primary when she was running against Biden.
I'm joined by my colleague, NBC News Washington correspondent Yamiche Alcindor, as well as Margaret Talev, director of Syracuse University's Institute for Democracy, Journalism, and Citizenship. They've both been watching all of these focus groups as we've been doing throughout this election season. Thank you both so much for joining me here. And Yamiche and Margaret, look, this is the first one we've done since Kamala Harris clinched the Democratic nomination. What stood out to you?
What stood out to me is that in this sliver of the population, which I think we have to underscore, these are Latino voters who are undecided. So there are a lot of people who've already made up their minds. But they were still deeply skeptical of Vice President Harris. And she has a lot of work to do to really bring them over onto her side, especially when it comes to sort of explaining why she's qualified for this job. I think the last voter encapsulated what a lot of them were saying. And I think it also shows you why the Harris team isn't really leaning too heavily on the fact that she's going to be this historic candidate and this historic president, if she's elected, that, of course, being the first Black woman and the first Asian woman and the first woman in general. They're trying to say she's accomplished. She has earned this. She is qualified to do this. And it's because they're trying to convince voters who might look up and say, I don't want somebody just because they're history making. I want somebody who's actually ready to do this job. And that's why she's trying to make that case.
So, Margaret, those voters didn't seem to know a whole lot about Kamala Harris. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is it a blank slate?
In this segment, it's really more of a negative than a positive. And it just goes to show, we just came out of this week where the larger national polling is showing surging enthusiasm among Democrats. The Harris campaign and the Democratic Party felt like they did a masterful job of introducing her. Who is she? Who's her family? What does she believe? How is she similar to Joe Biden? How is she different? But none of these voters was watching that. A couple watched some of it. None of them were like gavel to gavel. And so their takeaway
you mean
now.
they weren't glued to their TVs like we were?
They were not the people inside the convention hall. Yeah. And so there is a challenge in introducing a candidate to voters who are already tuned out.
It is striking to think about the fact that not one of them said, I watched most or all of that convention. Right. When you think about the fact that Democrats feel so good coming out of that, the roll call and Little John and sort of all of the energy. Oprah was there, Beyonce was not. But that being said, you still had this sort of energy where there were people in the Democratic Party feeling like, okay, this is a great way to introduce her. And then you have these voters saying, well, actually, I didn't even really watch.
You know, another thing that was interesting watching that segment is that the voters there said that they thought Trump was more of an agent of change than Kamala Harris. But the recent polling says the opposite.
Well,
Margaret, what do you make of that?
I don't think they meant like hope and change. It's not like a 2008 redux. I think what they meant was that they, even if they don't know everything about Vice President Harris, they see her largely as a continuation of the Biden administration's policies, whereas Trump obviously is a completely different candidate than Joe Biden. But some see the change as sort of like chaos change.
So he's a disruptor, maybe not a change agent?
Some of them want that disruption. Right. Some of them are recalling the economy before COVID. They're saying I had more money in my pocket. They're giving him credit for that. Some of them care about border security and saw him as tougher on the border. But for many saying that he's the bigger change, they're saying that's not change they want.
But Yamiche, recent polling says the opposite. How do you square that?
It's hard. Well, the way you square that is by one, underscoring that this is a sliver of the population, a very, very sort of particular group of people that we wanted to hear from. That being said, there is this idea that you have two incumbents running against each other. Even though she's not the president, she's the vice president. And the Biden-Harris administration has been very clear and very, I think, they've been very thoughtful in making sure that the Harris part of that administration was plastered everywhere, that she was in a lot of the press briefings, that she was in all of these moments where the president was making these big decisions. So in some ways that was helpful to her because it showed her in a presidential light, but it also tied her to the Biden administration. Now the big challenge is going to be, and I just about to put out some reporting, a big challenge is going to be how does she differentiate herself? Right. There are some people on the Harris team, just talking to sources, who tell me that they are ready to sort of roll the bus over Joe Biden, that they are ready to say she didn't agree with some of the things that he did, maybe even the Afghanistan withdrawal. Maybe she's going to sort of find a way to lay blame about the things she doesn't like on him, and then she's going to try to sort of say, here's what I would do.
I want to turn quickly to what these voters had to say about the issue of abortion. Yes. Let's take a listen.
Denise, tell me how abortion is going to be a big factor in who you vote for.
I'm a firm believer in a woman's right to choose. That's going to be what I base maybe my vote on. But
help me understand that, right? Because before you told me you were going to take Trump, didn't you?
I struggle. I mean, had you not brought up the abortion issue, I may have just stayed where I was, but it is a struggle for me. I was in a city that had major demonstrations after Roe v. Wade, and they were very disturbing. And then I mean, I'm going to be so all over the place with this. On the other hand, I don't know what Kamala can do in 4 years for this. I really don't.
It's too many ways to avoid to get pregnant. And I think after the 15 week, I think you cannot have an abortion. I'm sorry.
Lori, what about you?
Child over there.
Kind of the same Christian views, right? And being a Catholic, yeah, I mean, I guess you can argue lots of ways, but I do very strongly feel like what Victor said at a certain point, that fetus is an actual baby. And that to me, that 15-week mark is definitely that case. It's not just a clump of cells anymore. It's an actual person.
I don't think at any point in time I have a right to tell somebody what to do with their body. And I wouldn't want anybody to tell me what to do with mine.
So it would be a ban on abortion beyond the 15 weeks?
Yes.
Why wait that long until there is such an entity in your body that is a real fetus? And, you know, people talk about having the choice, but nobody had choices with the vaccine. You know what I mean? So when people are pushing for choice, it has to go 100%. We have 100% choice, which we didn't have during the vaccines.
As it always is, abortion is such a deeply personal issue for so many voters. But listening to those voters, Margaret, how big of an issue do you think this will be impacting how they vote and how other voters vote this election?
Setting aside that last voter who may be skeptical, but she defaults to Donald Trump every time, right? This was Vice President Harris's clearly strongest issue with this slice of voters. And it's not around phrases like abortion on demand. It's around phrases like women's reproductive health. Does a woman have a right to make decisions? Should it be between a woman and her doctor? Even if you are in this sort of dynamic, and some of these voters said they support some limits on, they're really struggling with the issue. This was the only issue compared to the economy, compared to the border, compared to knowing who the candidate is and what you're getting. I mean, we were hearing consistently words like, she's a ghost, she's a shadow, we don't know who she is. On this issue, they know where she is and they know where Donald Trump is, and they are much more comfortable with where she is.
And it dovetails with what we've been hearing, right? Margaret and I have sat through now these late night focus groups for months. And the thing that I keep coming back to is that abortion is the #1 issue that will actually impact someone's vote. They might not lay it as the top issue. It might be the economy or something else. But when you ask people, how much is abortion going to impact the way that you actually go and put a name down in a ballot box? 9 times out of 10, I've heard, is that this actually impacts them. So you see that woman saying, I'm torn, I want to vote for Trump, but abortion is something that's going to impact me. That's a real thing that we've seen across these focus groups.
And the Harris campaign is betting on that.
Oh, of course. The Harris campaign is definitely betting on this. As Margaret so smartly put, the vice president has just been the #1 person for the administration on this issue. She's toured. She's talked about this. I mean, her campaign slogan, freedom. There are a lot of freedoms listed under there, but freedom to choose what to do with your body is definitely a top one.
Yamiche and Margaret, thank you so much for joining me. We really do appreciate your time, and we appreciate those voters sharing their thoughts with us.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.